I send the pestilence and plague into your house, into your bed, into your streets, into your drink, into your bread, upon your cattle, on your sheep, upon your oxen, in your field, into your drinks, into your state, until you break, until you hear. I send the sword, I send the sword, thus saith the Lord.
Welcome to Wednesday Night's Bible Study. My name is Philip Brand, and this is Seth Parnell.
Hello.
And we are almost at the end of the spring Bible study, quote-unquote, semester. Yeah, and then we take a break for the summer and come back in September. That's what we do.
Summertime's coming.
Yeah, so, we won't get through all these plagues. Yeah. This is actually part 13.
Wow.
We're in chapter 10. So you said that, originally we said if it's 2, it'd be 80. You said to keep it 76.
So I think I said 77. I think it was 77.
Well, I wrote down 76. I can change it.
Okay. I think it was 77 because that was close to the perfect number of perfection.
Yeah, close. And Grayson said 60. So we're still, in the tension of who's going to be right.
Yeah.
Who's going to be right. I don't know, and I'm not trying to make anybody right. I'm just,
We'll see.
Yeah, but I have slowed it down a little bit because we're not going to start the Passover until this September. We're just not going to do that. Once you get into it, you just need to flow with it.
Yeah.
Because that's a big section, the Passover section. So yeah, we slowed down a little bit, unexpectedly, but very adequately, too. You like those words?
Yes.
Very
50,
adequate.
50-cent words.
That's right.
Those
Because
college words.
Last week, the 7th plague, that's the biggest description of a plague in all 10 of them. The one that comes in second place is the 8th plague, the locust plague. Now, you could really make an argument that the instructions for the Passover makes the 10th plague the longest one. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about from the point it is warned of Pharaoh to the actual plague happening. So I'm not really including the Passover narrative where they learn how to do the Passover. If you did that, of course, the 10th one would be the longest.
And you're talking about
but not
words.
the most detailed. Detailed before you get there, but not detail of the actual plague itself. Yeah.
Are you talking about the amount of words in that section describing it? Gotcha.
So when the 10th plague starts, it's shorter than the 7th plague and the 8th plague. The description is. Leading up to it is definitely longer, the historical background.
Okay.
To when you get there. But that's here nor there, right? Because we're in the 8th plague.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's Exodus chapter 10, if you haven't already turned in your Bible there. If you haven't already guessed that's where we're at. Exodus chapter 10. This one is written to describe the devastation that has happened to the land of Egypt. We already know that there's devastation. We have, in this Bible study, pointed that out. From the Nile turning to blood and all the fish dying, to the frogs, to the gnats, to the flies, to the cattle dying. All of that is, you can see the devastation. But this really emphasizes how the people are now feeling about the devastation. And it's even worse than it was in the 7th plague after this is over. So it just keeps getting worse and worse and worser. Right?
That's a word.
That is a word. Because we've used it so many times, we might as well just make it a part of the vocabulary and forget about grammar altogether.
It's a 75-cent word.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of this plague, you're asking, what more could God do to the land of Egypt? What more could he do? And of course, that question is answered in the 9th and the 10th plague. The other thing, as we jump into here, we need to realize that from the 7th plague on, it becomes not only a struggle outside that they have to deal with, the Egyptians, but it's also an inward struggle of faith, of, just trying to figure out what's happening. And there's some hurt to it as well. And we discussed some hurt from the 7th plague, hail, last week. So that brings us to this one. Verse 1 of chapter 10 says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, go into Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I may show these signs of mine among them." I have hardened his heart. The best translation of that is, I have made his heart hard. I know I have hardened his heart says the same thing, but for me, that word made his heart hard. And so we stop here to think about, how did he do that? Because there's several ways that he could do that. He could do it directly. Snap his fingers, harden his heart. It's done. And there's a forward action to it. Or he could do it another way. And this way is how he did it here. He actually withdrew everything that would cause Pharaoh to think differently. All the influences that might require him to have a more open mind for what's going on, God has withdrawn from this. And we see this from the grammar is, I have made his heart hard. I have made it to where he cannot change his mind. I've removed all the influences, is how that goes. How he has made it almost impossible. In fact, impossible for Pharaoh to think any differently. He is not going to have an open mind. So that brings us to the question of, is it really healthy to have an open mind? Yes and no. Sometimes people have an open mind to where they accept everything, and that is not healthy. That is just as bad as a hardened heart, where you accept all faiths, all people's beliefs, and you think they all mix together and we're just fine with it all. That is way too open of a mind. Open of a mind to where you would follow whatever comes your way. Does that make sense? Too open. But there's a danger to a closed mind too, like Pharaoh has, where you're not listening to reality. You're not listening to what's going on. You're not observing what should be done. You're not seeing how God is communicating with you. So your mind has to be open in a healthy fashion to where you can actually look at what's happening in your world and decide what to do. Like, is God telling you this, and how can I follow God? So an open mind to submit to God and what he wants you to do. So here he doesn't have that. Now, hardening Pharaoh's heart, God did this after Pharaoh had already decided to harden his own heart. So this is not the first time that Pharaoh's heart is hardened. God is just honoring the choice of Pharaoh in this action. Okay, you're going to harden your heart. I'm going to help you do it. I'm going to remove all the influences that could possibly change your mind. I think it's good to also note that God isn't hardening Pharaoh's heart just to play with him. To this, God is really serious about this, and he has other purposes for hardening Pharaoh's heart. But he's not playing around with Pharaoh or his leaders. So the question comes up, then why did he harden Pharaoh's heart? And we've touched on this in this Bible study through Exodus, but we're going to touch on it again because it's repeated here. First, it says that I may show these signs of mine among them. Like, without their hearts being hardened, I would have no reason to give these plagues. Now, the Egyptians' hearts were already hardened against God long before Moses arrived. They were treating the people incorrectly. They were abusing them. The people were crying out to God because of that. And so they had already hardened their hearts up until this point. So he wants to be able to show that he wants to show these signs to them, that he's the one in control, that he's the one in power, he's the one that they should recognize. even before they started treating the children of Israel incorrectly, they were already worshiping other gods. Mm-hmm. So when you worship an idol, you're hardening your own heart against the one true God. And you're not saying that he exists. So all of that was in the mix. So if you have people that are addicted to idolatry, then God is saying, I have to harden their heart in order to show them signs that I'm the one true God and that their false gods are not really powerful at all. So to switch beliefs, he had to shake up their world. So verse 2 continues with the reasons why he's hardening Pharaoh and his leader's heart. It says this, and that you may tell in the hearing of your son and of your grandson how I have dealt harshly with the Egyptians and what signs I have done among them, that you may know that I am the Lord. So hardening Pharaoh's heart was also for the Israelites to see God's power as well. So that the Israelites would see that God is actively involved in their life, that God does care and God is powerful and he is all sufficient. So each one of these plagues was a testimony to the believers in Yahweh that he was the one true God and these false gods were not true at all and that they should follow God. And so significant was these powerful plagues that this is a story that they would need to pass on to their children and their children's children. This sets up what you and I are supposed to be doing in our homes with our children. We are supposed to be passing on our faith to them and the mighty works of God to them. Not only the mighty works of God in the Bible, but the mighty works of God that he's actually doing in our personal lives, in our family's life. This is how God has worked in our past. He answered this prayer when we prayed for Aunt Jane. He answered this prayer when we were struggling with a sickness in our own personal family. This is how God worked his power in our life. And we need to remember this as we go forward and pass this down from generation to generation. So he was doing this to be known. He was doing this so a story could be passed on to family members. And he was doing this to punish the Egyptians for how they had treated the children of Israel.
That's interesting. Because this whole time, it's like God is, we know he's showing his power, but there's more to just harden his heart. It's more than just, I'm showing my power. He's setting all of these things up to teach them something, and so they can better understand this big God that they're serving and that the Egyptians are going up against.
Right. It's not God being petty.
Right.
Yeah, he actually has a purpose that's good for all of this. Yeah. One way that this passing on will be carried out is through singing. Now, we don't see it here, but later they're going to sing about this. In the Psalms, there's probably at least 30 or more Psalms that sing about this particular event, these plagues, and how God delivered them from the Egyptians. So through singing, they're passing it along to children. And I think music is a very strong teacher for kids. Yeah. It's a strong teacher for us. And whatever you're listening to is teaching you something. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it's still teaching you how to live. Yeah. All music teaches you how to live. Yeah. So be careful what you listen to. Yeah.
I saw something today. I don't remember the guy that said it and who he is speaking on behalf of, but he was talking about worship music in the church, and he was saying that lyrics are important because they this is partly how we pass on how one way we can access our worship to God to the next generation, and just the importance of worshiping and singing.
Yeah, and there are some worship songs today that just are throwing in phrases that nobody knows what they mean. And actually phrases that aren't, it's not that they're not biblical in the sense that is not something that God would do right now. But because they have sold in other songs, they include them
Right.
in their songs. So we do need to be careful. And I'm not against modern music at all. I mean, I think we should continue to write songs, but I do think that we need to be aware that there are some things that are said in certain worship songs that get popular that just isn't the way that God works
Yep.
at all. Yeah. It sounds good, makes you feel good. You like the phrase, but there's no really impactive meaning behind those particular words. Yeah. I also want to note that currently the children of Israel are in a good spot. These current plagues are not affecting them at all. So they are learning the power of God while being blessed. Which goes back to my belief that you can learn just as much about God in the good times as you do in the bad times. Yeah. Wow. The bad times does make you go a little bit deeper in your faith, like it feels deeper, it feels more significant, but you can learn about the power of God in the good times. There is never a more beneficial time to learn about the goodness of God. In fact, if you wake up in the morning, it's a day that you can learn about his goodness and grow in your faith, good or bad, whatever the day is. Or mediocre, you can learn about God in a mediocre day. Yeah. So verse 3, so Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh and said to him, thus says the Lord God of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me and let my people go that they may serve me? This shows you that the reason that Pharaoh was not letting them go was a prideful reason. You are refusing to humble yourself before me. Because of your pride, you are not letting God's people go. How long will you hold on to your pride? I think this is a great question for us too. There are times in our lives where we hold on to pride. It may be in the inclination to win an argument. And so we don't give up on our truth when we know that our truth is now invalid, right? And we just hold on to it rather than saying, okay, I was wrong, let's move on. It could be in our inclination to win, like someone looks down on us and then we want to prove them wrong. I mean, our pride could be there too. There's different ways pride shows up in our life. And so, this question, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me, is really a question that we need to ask ourselves from time to time. Yeah. Am I really humbling myself right now before God? Am I submitting? Am I able to admit I'm wrong? And am I able to admit I'm right in the right spirit? So pride, I think that's something that we need to ask ourselves about. Pride is really the seed of hardening someone's heart, your own personal heart. It hardens it. And prideful people don't listen. Arrogant people do not listen. And I'll stop here to say there's a difference between people accusing you of not listening and you not listening. Right. You just have to know what you're doing. There's been times I've been accused of not listening, and I've listened the whole time, comprehended, just made a different decision, and that person just doesn't like my decision. Because their definition of listening is, I'm going to tell him this so he can follow me. Well, that's not listening. That's speaking with an agenda. Right? A person that listens to all sides and then tries to make the best decision. Yeah.
Listening to submit.
Listening to submit, to try to figure out, or listening to comprehend what is the best thing to do in this particular situation. Not what I think is the best thing. What is the best thing? Yeah.
And that's from the heart of wisdom, not pride, but wisdom.
Right, wisdom. Yeah. Verse 4, for if you refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow. That word tomorrow is used a lot in the plagues. I'm going to stop the plague tomorrow. I'm going to start the plague tomorrow. Over and over again, that word tomorrow is used. Every time I see that word now, I think of it in terms of God is in control of it all, and he can set the times when plagues are going to start and when they're going to end. He can set your times and seasons. He is sovereign, in control of everything. He starts and stops stuff all the time. So I will bring locusts into your country, and they shall cover the face of the land so that no one can see the land, and they shall eat what is left to you after the hail. The hail had destroyed most everything, but there was still some crops in the field because they were not ripe yet. These locusts are going to come in and take care of the rest of it. And they shall eat every tree of yours that grows in the field, and they shall fill your houses and the houses of all your servants and all the Egyptians, as neither your fathers nor your grandfathers have seen from the day they came on the earth to this day. Then he turned and went out from Pharaoh. That particular phrase, they have never seen this before. The Egyptians had seen locusts, but they had seen locusts in the form of 1 to 10 miles of locusts in one location. They had never seen locusts come up that would literally cover the whole land of Egypt, except Goshen. They'd never seen that before, which I think that would have been an interesting thing to see. Well, you have all these locusts, and then you have this land of Goshen that has no locust in it. That'd have been very interesting to look at. They will eat everything. Now, a couple of things about locusts. Locusts weighs almost 2 grams, and they can eat their body weight in a day.
Wow.
Yeah. Full body weight.
It's a lot of destruction.
This is obviously describing a non-natural occurrence. They will definitely feel that this is supernatural. And do you know, Seth, the God that they would think of that they had during this time? The Egyptians had good gods and they had mischievous, evil gods. And they worshiped both of them, which blows my mind. Yeah, they worship both of them. Do you know the God, a God of mischief, a God of disorder, that they would? Do you know a name of an Egyptian god that would?
I don't.
That would kind of fit in with he's the one that would send these locusts. Possibly.
Should I?
You should.
I should.
You should. You really should. It will be very, let's say, obvious once I say it. The god's name is Seth.
Oh my goodness. Oh wow.
He's a mischievous god of destruction. Is what it is. Brings all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He wears the name well.
So when Moses goes out and lifts his staff, it is saying that even your evil gods are not in control.
Wow. Man.
I am. So God doesn't just demonstrate that the good gods are not powerful. He demonstrates that the bad gods, the bad boy gods,
The Seths.
the Seths. Oh, by the way, your mother's name, not yours, but the Seth's mother's name, not his, but the god is Nut, which we discussed in the hell god. Yeah, her name's Nut.
Wow.
Yeah.
She's a nut.
Yeah, so Seth his mother is Nutty.
My mom is a nut.
Yeah, in a different way. Yeah, in a different way. So yeah, this will be a natural occurrence. It will occur, and nobody will be able to escape it, and nobody will be able to escape the power and the supernatural essence of it. Yeah. So verse 7, then Pharaoh's servant said to him, how long shall this man be a snare to us? Let the men go, that they may serve the Lord their God. Do you not understand that Egypt is ruined? Now, first of all, this took a lot of guts for them to say this to Pharaoh. Second, these are people that are desperate for all this to be over. Third, they want Pharaoh to figure out how to let these people go. So let these people go, that they may serve the Lord their God. However, the leaders are only wanting to let the men go. The reason that they only want to let the men go is because the fear is that the children of Israel will actually leave their country and not come back. And therefore they lose their whole labor force. If they leave the women and children, they know that the men will come back.
Come back for their families.
Yeah. So there's a control issue here. Just let's let them go, and we know they'll come back because their women and children are still here. So Moses and Aaron were brought back into Pharaoh, and he said to them, "Go serve the Lord your God, but which ones are to go?" Now we enter into a Dr. Seuss book. Moses said, "We will go with our young, we will go with our old, we will go with our sons, we will go with our daughters, we will go with our cattle, our flocks, we will go with our herds. We must hold a feast to the Lord." That just reminds me, and it's that we will go with is repeated over and over in the Hebrew. It reminds me of the green eggs and ham. Will you eat them in a train? Will you eat them in a bus? Will you eat them?
Awesome.
That sort of deal. Yeah. So we're going to take everything, is what Moses is saying. And that is not what the leaders or Pharaoh wanted to hear. But he said to them, "The Lord be with you if I ever let you and your little ones go." That's sarcasm. Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. Lightning would have to strike me before I allowed you to. That would be similar to what we would say, right? Yeah. Or the world would have to start spinning before I would allow you to do whatever. And that's precisely what Pharaoh is doing here. So verse 11, "Now go, the men among you, and serve the Lord, for that is what you are asking." And they were driven out from Pharaoh's presence. So that particular statement, "Now go, take the men among you and serve the Lord, for that is what you are asking," is a command from Pharaoh to Moses and Aaron to do as he commanded. So this is all about control. This is all about Pharaoh not losing face. This is all about him being the supreme being in the universe. You do what I say. Just go. Which is very interesting because Pharaoh couldn't stop any of these plagues.
Yeah. He still wanted to be on top.
And so at some level, Pharaoh was holding on to power he knew he didn't have. An authority with a command that he knew he didn't have. I think he's insecure on the inside. But he's, saying you can't go.
Yeah.
But that's an assumption on my part. He might not have been insecure at all. Verse 12, "Then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the land of Egypt and for the locusts, so that they may come up upon the land of Egypt and eat every plant in the land, all that the hail has left." So Moses stretched out his staff over the land of Egypt, and the Lord brought an east wind upon the land all that day and all that night. The key phrase there is the Lord brought an east wind. This shows that God is sovereign over natural creation. The winds and the weather systems and the clouds and whatever happens. He's also in control of where locusts actually reside. So it's not Seth, it's him. So he brings these winds into Egypt. I lost my verse.
Was it 13?
14. Yep. "The locusts came up over all the land of Egypt and settled on the whole country of Egypt. Such a dense swarm of locusts as had never been before, nor ever will be again." And if you think about the sound of that, it would have been a loud, locust sound of them flapping their wings. They covered the face of the whole land so that the land was darkened. That means when you looked out over the hills and trees and everything, it was just black.
Wow.
Very dark with probably very dark green, but probably looked black. You couldn't see any dirt. You couldn't see any green. You couldn't see anything. It was just so many of them. And they ate all the plants in the land and all the fruit of the trees that the hail had left. Not a green thing remained, neither tree nor plant of the field, through all the land of Egypt. It's gone. This pictures a lush land of Egypt that is made to look like a desert. Then Pharaoh hastily called Moses and Aaron and said, I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Now therefore forgive my sin, please, only this once, and plead with the Lord your God only to remove this death from me. So he went out from Pharaoh and pleaded with the Lord. A couple of things are happening here. Because of the total devastation of these locusts, there is now a famine in the land of Egypt. I think this is interesting because it was a famine that brought the children of Israel to Egypt in the first place. And it was God, through Joseph, that saved the Egyptians from the famine. It was all his power. Now, as God is preparing for them to leave the land of Egypt, there is a famine so that they will leave. Part of the reason for these plagues is so that the children of Israel would disconnect, have a disconnect moment from where they had lived their entire lives and be willing to go.
Wow, that's a good point.
So God's doing a lot of stuff here. Why stay here? The land is devastated. We just need to go somewhere else to a land flowing with milk and honey and follow the promises of God.
Yeah.
So you detach from the things of this earth to attach to kingdom sort of stuff. Yeah. And the Lord turned the wind into a very strong east wind. Notice he turned, that particular word is changed, which also, again, shows the sovereignty of God over natural creation. Turned the wind into a very strong west wind, which lifted the locust and drove them into the Red Sea. Now, the Red Sea is at the border, basically, of Egypt. It's kind of beyond the border. But the point here is that God could have taken them to the Nile, like he did the frogs, but he didn't. Well, the frogs were actually in heaps everywhere, but he did, anyway. He took them to the Red Sea. So it's outside of Egypt, and now all the carcasses of the locusts are now at the Red Sea, not to bother them again. Because not a single locust was left in the country of Egypt. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the people of Israel go. Yeah. So what do you think about all that?
When's he going to learn?
He's not, because he hardened his heart, and now God's hardening his heart.
Yep. Yeah. You made that statement about God doing this to kind of prepare Israel to detach from Egypt.
Yeah.
They're the people that enslaved them. And it's interesting because I know, further into the story of Exodus, they get to that point where they're like, it would have been better for us to go back to Egypt. But it really wouldn't have been.
No.
Because Egypt is still healing from this destruction. And so God does things, and he moves people around. He moves his people in strategic ways to prepare them for that next step.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, he does help you detach. I think about sometimes people go through a time with their loved one where you wonder why in the world God is allowing them to still be alive. For instance, they're in hospice, they're barely eating, they haven't been there for weeks, like mentally there for weeks. Right. And you wonder why it's taking 2 to 3 weeks for them to actually pass away. Well, one of the main reasons for that is so that the people that love them can start that detachment, so the grief won't be as hard.
Yeah.
I think grief sometimes is harder when someone goes away instantly, like especially if there's a great relationship,
right,
than when someone, goes a little bit at a time. Because at some point in that process, people switch over to, I just really wish that God would take her home. I just really wish that God would just take her home and relieve us of all of this. I don't know why God is allowing him to live on.
right.
There's no purpose, and I'm almost upset at God for that. Well, once you get to that point, God has really set you up to handle the grief of the loss better.
Yeah.
Be able to hold it, or it won't weigh you down as much. I've seen that happen. But yeah. So in all of life, sometimes when we are supposed to move locations, jobs, change friends, there's a detaching sort of event that occurs, or several event that occurs. We've had that happen to us, where there was a detachment period.
Right.
Yeah. So God is gracious, I think, in that, even though it's horrible to think about.
Yep.
God is gracious in that. Well, that's it.
8th plague.
Yeah. Yeah.
10th chapter.
Yeah.
13th part.
13th part, 14th next week. Plague of darkness.
Going for 77.
The plague of darkness. We'll have to say it that way next week. The plague of darkness.
Like a Monster Jam commercial.
That's right.
The plague
Of darkness. All right, that said grace and peace.
Then let my heart be hardened, and never mind how high the toss may grow. This will still be so. I will never